Mark, welcome.
I feel like we're where everybody knows our name.
Yeah, I was thinking we were talking about cheers when we came on, but I think we look more like the Brady Bunch in this thing. Then we do cheers, but we'll stick with the cheers theme today. So, welcome everybody who is live. If you're live, please jump in. Let us know you're here. I think we're going to have a lively conversation today, and also welcome if you're on the podcast. And before we get into our topic today, which is, what is easy for me to say. So does your LinkedIn profile really matter? And we're going to get into that. Before we do that, we have our more important piece here, which is our weekly dad joke.
Easy for you to say.
It is. I shouldn't be drinking so much at lunchtime. So it's dad joke challenge. And I don't know Mark, who should go first, Brandon or Carson?
Oh man, Carson. Absolutely.
Okay.
My hair used to be that color when I was younger. I was a ginger. So you got to go with brothers of another mother. So Mr. Carson, so what's your dad joke? I hope it's better than Tom's last week.
Oh, we're ready. So the machine needs no pause or delay or even do any research. The machine is always ready. So why don't scientists trust atoms? Because they make up everything.
Oh.
All
right.
Judging thing is kind of.
Yeah, I don't think ChatGPT put a really high bar up there.
All right, Brandon, come on, step up, brother. Let's
all right. I got this one for you, Carson, because it's a movie reference, and I know you like your movies, but this doesn't count. You still have to figure out how to bring a movie into our conversation today.
All
right. So why didn't Han Solo like his steak? Because it was chewy.
Ooh. All right.
I got a laugh out of Mark.
Oh yeah. That's
all right, Mark. You're our special guest today. Who won?
Oh man, Brandon took that one away. That was good. That was good. Yeah. Hey Tom, what's the total score? I mean, I got to believe that there's a scoreboard somewhere.
Well, I don't know exactly, but my guess is it's like ChatGPT 6 and Brandon now won. I think that may be what it is. I'm not 100%.
Brandon has 2.
2. Okay.
You're both biased.
So we're just going to say 5-2 as of right now, and then we'll keep a running total going forward.
Right.
Yeah.
But Mark,
Adam in the chat said he didn't appreciate your joke, Carson.
Hey, that's okay.
It's the Adam joke.
Right. That's right.
That's right, Adam.
But Marianne,
I'm going to give Adam a point for that actually. That's pretty funny.
Yeah. Marianne Brandon's best, so we're 1-1 right now.
Yeah, well, and look, everybody listening, Tom and Carson, they're just hedging their bet when the robots take over. They want to be able to say that they sided with them, so they favor ChatGPT. It's not a bad move, but
strategic. It's strategic.
There you go.
Strategic.
So, Mark, welcome.
Thank you.
And I'm sorry you have to go experience all of this, but now you know what you're getting into.
Right.
So tell us a little bit about, who you are, your background, and then we'll kind of jump into things.
No, sure. Thanks, Tom and Brandon and Carson for having me on. I appreciate it. I've been following this show for quite a while, and I'm sold out to the good work that you guys do. I've been in IT since the early 80s, as you can see from some of this blonde hair I'm sporting. I've been at IBM 23 years. I've been a quota carrying guy for a lion's share of that in some large financial services accounts across the United States. Over the course of the last couple of years, I've moved more into sales enablement, traveling the world, teaching IBM teams how to leverage design thinking to collaborate and co-create with clients on the different solutions we bring to the table. And now I lead the global sales performance and coaching team in helping sellers throughout that whole sales cycle, whether it's in the front end of discovery, where you have a suspect to a prospect to a conversation, to co-creation, all the way to the close and delivery. And I help coach teams globally. We've got 18,000 sellers around the world and about 1,200 first line managers. So Carson, we pale in comparison to the size of Microsoft, But, we're really great partners, IBM and Microsoft. A lot of people don't know that. But my job is to come alongside of sellers, selling teams globally, leave them better for the coaching experience, and help them win more often.
I was even going to say, Mark and I obviously were talking before this. I've had the pleasure of working alongside a lot of ex-IBMers. They're in another level. They're of very high caliber. So I think that speaks a lot to the training and coaching you deliver, Mark.
Well, thanks, Carson. I appreciate it. We got a great team.
So Mark, as a coach and working with so many different groups and whatever, would love your take on what you're seeing changing, and what you're seeing that maybe worked before is not working now, and kind of where you see things going. And I think that sets the foundation for what we're going to talk about today as it relates to social selling and LinkedIn in general.
Well, that's a great question, Tom. I think if you drew a line, 3 lines down a piece of paper, you've kind of got the way sellers sold in the past. In the middle, you've kind of got the way sellers are selling today. And then you've kind of got out here a little bit, the way sellers are going to sell in the future. And if you think about the old ways, there was lots of cold calls because the internet didn't exist. You had a lot of really kind of high pressure sales, those kinds of things. You move today and now you've got a hybrid. And I think COVID accelerated that need to be able to figure out how to continue growing your business in the midst of a health crisis. And so that forced us all into our home offices, leveraging things like LinkedIn and other platforms in order to be able to accelerate our know the customer, understand their business and technology priorities. But as you move further and further into the future, you're going to see a fall off of the old sales techniques and methods and a ramp up and an increase in new methods. And I think we're probably at that juncture point today where the kinds of things that you do in terms of building trust digitally, having a trusted personal brand. In fact, I just authored an article on that and published it on LinkedIn to help people think about how their personal brand really builds trust. So I think we're into more of a digital future and really being well prepared before we talk to clients.
Wow. Well, we agree. Don't you think, guys? Do you think? I think that's a pretty good summary of, and I like your three columns that you were just going through, Mark, the past and kind of where we are now and where the future is. And, I know we don't believe that we're going back to the past. We talk to people all the time that maybe think that's going to happen, but I think, and certainly having the breadth of what you're seeing, you don't believe we're not going to go backwards. We're all moving forward. So.
Right.
So let's get into today's topic, which is, does your LinkedIn profile really matter? And I want to, hear from all of us, right, as to what we believe, first of all, is, and maybe Mark, we will start with you, but what do you believe is the primary purpose of a LinkedIn profile? How does that fit in? Why? And you were mentioning personal brand, obviously, a minute ago, but how does that fit in? And what's the value as a seller or a sales leader or anybody in the area? And, Carson, Brandon, we should all kind of just jump in and give our thoughts on this.
Yeah, great. Another great question. About 80% of our buyers do a whole bunch of research before they ever reach out to a salesperson. In fact, a lot of the millennials and younger folks would rather do business on the internet and all the research maybe without having to deal with a salesperson. So as we raise the bar of being a sales rep to becoming a professional sales advisor or consultant, I think the way we show up on LinkedIn is really important, our digital presence. It's a lot more than a resume. LinkedIn is probably 4 different platforms, but I think when you show up authentically and somebody is going to take a look at your profile in terms of the kind of person that you are before they meet with you, they can learn a lot. And the question is, how do you want to show up? So I think that really becomes your personal brand. And if you take that one step further, in Yellowstone, I wrote this article about John Dutton and the fact that they've got a brand in the show, and the brand is a promise. And Carson, for you, Microsoft, the Microsoft brand is a promise. It's a promise of cloud, a promise of a whole bunch of different things. And my question would be to the audience is, what does your LinkedIn profile say about you? But more important, what promise does it make to the customers that are coming to look you up?
Wow. Good answer. Brandon, Carson, What do you think?
It's an easy one to agree with. I think that I always say there's three parts to our social profile or to our social activity. It's our profile, it's our commenting, and it's our posting. And all three of those engage or interact with each other in order to create our personal brand or our reputation, whatever term you want to use. And I think they're all three necessary. When somebody gets to our profile, we want to make a good impression. And so, yeah, having a good picture, having a headline, making sure our about section is speaking to our the audience of choice. Too many people, LinkedIn profile becomes a resume, even when they're not looking for a job. And a buyer doesn't want to get there and review your resume. A potential buyer wants to look at it and understand who's this person that's trying to get my attention, and do I want to speak with them?
Carson, what's your take?
It's a great call out. As you know, I'm a man of few words. So does your LinkedIn profile really matter? Yes, it does. No, I think, Brandon, you have a list of three. I'm going to give a list of three as well, because I think it's really in line with what Mark and Brandon have articulated here. There's the personal brand element, right? You know that I love to sit and pontificate about the value of personal brand. But keep in mind, I mean, this is going to be a hub of where people are going to go to find you or not find you, check you out or not check you out, whether it's, you're trying to seek a job or you're trying to seek a customer relationship. Buyers are going to be looking at your profile. And so you want to establish that you are a credible person to be looking at or talking to from that perspective. It has definitely transformed from the resume that it was when LinkedIn surfaced back in, 2008. I remember when I got my first connection request back then, and I was like, what exactly is this? Now it has really become that, non-negotiable for being found and being sought out online. The other element is that connection that you can make with prospects. And so there's a lot of different ways you can, define this. We talked about the value of being able to find information, going to company pages or executive pages and being able to find out about them so that you can get that initial touch point out there, right? So you can personalize that message that you send. You can have that wherewithal to broker the dialogue. And there's so much that you can do to connect, whether it's sending connections, building communities, leveraging groups, doing events, sending those events to people. There's so many different ways that you can build community from that vantage point. And then lastly, being able to position yourself as a thought leader. Mark was talking about blogging. There's so many different things that you can do, sharing articles, having polls, starting conversations, and speaking directly to your audience. This is ultimately what builds trust with your audience, your target audience, and frankly establishes you as a thought leader in whatever you're passionate about talking about. And, I entered into that arena years ago. I've been very fortunate, it transformed my career. But it was really always about how can I engage people and ask questions and be provocative in areas that I cared about, like sales and leadership. And, whatever your why is, whatever your platform is, infuse that passion into how you show up on LinkedIn. You'll be very pleasantly surprised as to where it can go.
Yeah, and a good comment here. I don't know who this LinkedIn user is, but Mark, you already got a big thumbs up about your comment about manifesting trust. And, a profile pic is key to earning trust before even trying to connect to a lead or a prospect to a customer. We're going to talk about that in a minute, kind of the specifics of what really should go into the profile. I just wanted to add one thing to it about, everything, what everybody was saying about the profile, which I find interesting on LinkedIn. It's not just about, as you said, your resume or who you are, or, what you've done. But I think the opportunity with your profile, when you start looking at activity and you're looking at the things you're posting and all of that, it also gives you a much idea of really who that person is, what they care about, what they think about, how they communicate, their viewpoint on things. It just really provides a kind of this holistic 360 view of somebody versus a picture and a resume. And, how many times have you gotten a resume from somebody that looked great, and then you talk to them or you find out about them and you're like, this doesn't match. Right. And, LinkedIn gives you that opportunity to kind of give that 360 view of who that person is along the way. But let's jump into, I know we want to try to make this a bit more specific and hands-on, and Mark, would love to have you kind of start off by talking a bit when you're coaching people. I know you coach on how to, your team at LinkedIn, right? How to create a LinkedIn profile, or what's the best practices or whatever. But let's just start kind of above the fold, as I call it. When that profile comes up and you've got your picture and your headlines and all of that, what are some of the best practices that you focus on, even just starting above the fold?
Yeah. I think you have to decide what your role and responsibility is. If you're a C-level executive, yours is going to look different than if you're a seller, is going to look different than if you are inside of a corporation in some kind of an important departmental function. But for a lot of the folks that are, I think they're on this call, you're sellers, or you support a seller, or you're an IT architect. And in this case, it's that very first impression. And so I find that a number of folks that I've coached, in the banner itself is just that kind of that gray blue looking thing, and it doesn't say anything. And it's the biggest piece of real estate that you've got in a LinkedIn profile. Here at IBM, we have some tremendous folks that create banners for every role, every industry, every responsibility. So if you're in financial services, you don't have to invent it yourself. You can come to our LinkedIn banner profile and select something you like that's representative of the industry or the client set that you serve. If somebody comes out and takes a look at mine, you'll see me because I want to highlight some of the ways I coach with know, be known, serve, and solve, because it helps get away from selling and in more of a consultative approach. So the first thing I'd say is take a look at your banner and see what it says about you.
Interesting.
Secondly, the decent profile picture, I took mine with my cell phone. You don't have to go pay an agency to take a beautiful picture. Stand in a corner, get outside, blur the background. These new cell phones have got kind of a blurred background now so that, it focuses in on you in portrait mode. Just get something that makes you look professional, smile, looks like you'd be somebody that's fun to work with, so that you show up that way. So I think a professional photo is really great. It doesn't have to be done in a studio. You can have one of your friends take it, but make that something that's really, really powerful. The third piece I look at is a lot of folks just have their title, and there's an opportunity for you to do a little bit more in that area where you can put a vertical bar and then another word, so that if there are 3 to 5 things that represent you and what you stand for and who you are as an individual, I think you can expand that a ways and make sure that that's pretty decent. One final comment, Tom, and that would be around the about section. A lot of folks that have been job hunting, it's all about you. And that's the last thing you want as a seller. It's got to be all about your customer.
Yeah.
And so I encourage my folks to come back, and in that about section, the first paragraph or two, to have it be I. I have the privilege of serving the financial services industry as a artificial intelligence subject matter expert. I strive to understand my clients' business and technology initiatives, reach back into IBM to pull to our research department and solutions to help them accelerate their success. Now, when a C-level person or anybody comes into your profile and looks at what is it that you're about them. Now, underneath there, you've got some room to be able to start to tell a little bit about your story and a call to action, a way that they can reach you. But it ought to lead with customer first.
Great. Brandon, I know you have a very strong thought on this as it relates to even your personal side as well. How would you recommend taking what Mark just said and then kind of infusing it a bit more with some of the personal side? Again, looking at that above the fold.
Yeah, I think our headline and our about section are really great real estate for us. I agree. The banner, our picture, all of that, great message, Mark. I think we have opportunity there to bring out our personality a bit too. And this is why I think it's important. When we're in business environments, we're at, having a meal with a customer, we're in a networking event, we're standing in a booth. It's not all business, business, business. I think creating that humanity of who we are, making our, some of the words people use are authentic, being genuine, whatever it may be. I think that we have that opportunity there, and it's subtle, but we have the opportunity to be able to present ourselves as more of a holistic human, not just purely focused on business, because really that's what we look for in real life. We do business with those who we like. We do business with those who we resonate with. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there with the about section as well. And then I think the headline is just so important, especially because whenever we comment, what gets shown is our image, our name, and our headline. So it's really important real estate because it's not static just on our profile, but it ends up in front of lots of people the more active we get on LinkedIn. For a lot of people, that's going to be their first impression of you. What do you say about yourself? Do you capture intrigue, their intention? I've got somebody, his headline says, sometimes I spike my coffee. And then he goes on and talks about his business, right? If somebody finds that humorous or gets a little chuckle out of it, and they may resonate better and be like, hey, I want to know this guy more. So I think that's what I see is really important on bringing that humanity side out.
I love those. Yeah, I love those. A lot of people think about LinkedIn kind of like a resume. Well, did you know that most hiring managers and recruiters look at a resume for 8 to 15 seconds? So to Susan's comment in the chat, top 1/3 is make or break, banner, self, picture, title. Couldn't agree more, Susan. Think about it this way. There's so much flair. I always think of the movie Office Space, where Jennifer Aniston comes in with all of her pieces of flair.
Oh, the flair.
There's so many ways to add flair to your LinkedIn profile. Capitalize on all of them. Like with the banner, I had a colleague of mine actually make my banner for me, and it put some of my awards and my book covers on there. And, it really spruced it up. Before I was using something very generic. Keep in mind, you want somebody when they're visiting, they're going to see that top third. Profile picture. If you use your mobile app, you can actually record a video introduction as your profile picture embedded. So they can see your profile pic, but when they hover over it or click it, the video intro, talking directly to someone. You can do a name pronunciation. People mispronounce my name all the time. And so you can actually record your name pronunciation. So it takes away that awkwardness when you're talking to a client or a buyer or a colleague or anyone, so that they know exactly how to pronounce your name. Headline gives you the capability to do unique flair. My personal brand has an identity crisis. I've got a lot of customers that are executives. I'm an influencer in the sales community, but I still carry quota. So I straddle a lot of lines when it comes to my brand. So my headline gives me the capability to call out a lot of the things that I want to be having conversations about. You can put hashtags. You can put hashtags about what you want to talk about so that people can find you easier. You can link your blog to your website link on the top section. All of these things that continue to point toward different places. And then lastly, that featured section is wonderful. If you've got a piece of content, a document you've created, a blog you've written, videos, video interviews, you can put all of those things in your featured section so that people can see that front and center.
I really like, it's funny you mentioned hashtags. Don't you have to have be a content? What do they call it on LinkedIn when you're a
creator mode?
Creator mode, right? But I really like the hashtags when I see it. It's almost one of the first things I look at is I'll scan the hashtags because to me it gives a quick snapshot of what that person cares about, right? And the types of things that they would be. And you sometimes see something in there that's not immediately obvious in the headline or some of the other things that they may be interested in, or you may have a common interest in as well. So,
that's an interesting comment and question, Tom, for Mark and Carson. What's the first thing that you pay attention to when you get on somebody's profile?
I think it depends a little bit on my purpose of going there. And I try to think how my customer would think. And it's not, team, it's just not for the pre-sales side of things. Carson, you've talked about negotiating and winning a 9-figure deal. And I did the same different 9-figure deal, but one in a large insurance client here in the US. And I knew the negotiating team was going to come look up who the IBM negotiating team was going to be at the negotiating table. We are well into the thing in here. How did I want the IBMers that were going to show up during the course of the negotiation to appear to the folks that were at the account? And in this case, I wanted a reputation for being thoughtful and humble and professional. And I wanted to see that others held me in high esteem. So you got to think that what shows up in your LinkedIn profile can be used at almost every single stage of a sales, even after the sale. Somebody is going to come look at my project manager to look at their LinkedIn profile before they land on site to do a multi-million-dollar implementation. So your LinkedIn profile matters at every dimension of your relationship with a client. Now, what do I look at first? I look at the header that says a lot about the person. I'll scroll down and take a look at the kinds of things that they've posted recently. If they're just reposting the stuff that comes out of corporate marketing with no comments or insights or personal perspectives, that's like me calling you on your birthday and just saying, "Hey, happy birthday, Brandon." That's an empty comment. And so you have to add value. And I think that's the important part. I want to see that the people that are on my team are adding value that would be worth something to the customer that's going to come take a look at them. And then thirdly is if they're writing something from their voice from scratch, not a repost, but do you have a point of view? Can you add value? And then lastly, I scroll clear to the bottom to look at references and recommendations, because I've had people on my team, and I'm embarrassed to say so, and all of you that are listening into this, you need to go look at yours now and scroll down. I've had folks that have been with my company for 23 years, and they have never said one kind thing about a customer or colleague that have made a difference in their life, and nobody else had ever said a kind thing about them. And so I think that clear at the bottom, which you don't get too fast, is where others in an unbiased manner talk about you. And we get to see whether you have a gracious heart and you're filled with gratitude for the good work that others have done with you.
That's amazing stuff, Mark. I love that. I think it depends for me what specifically that relationship is going to entail. So if I'm looking at a customer executive, I want to know their story. I want to know their journey. Where have they been? Do we have any synergies, commonalities? Who are our shared contacts? I'm always very intrigued by that. Who do we know in common? Especially if it's a new contact for me. I also want to see what they want to be known for. How do they write their about section? There are some, and I like the challenge, right? If I know I'm going to be likely negotiating a deal with someone and they pride themselves as a strong, tough negotiator, I like to see that. I like to know that, right? I like to know what I'm getting into. So that's sometimes intriguing for me. But I like to look at the work history. What have they said about the places that they've been? Because oftentimes that'll show me, like, what do they care about? What do they pride themselves in? Because if I can see what looks like a win to them, guess what? Now I know what I ultimately need to deliver, how I'm going to serve, and what a win looks like to them so that we can win together. A lot of the things Mark articulated, yes. I loved what he said about the recommendations piece. I like to see what they're sharing and if they're sharing their own stuff. And how that looks, but really I want to see the whole journey. And then the last piece, talking about sales tools we've used before, Humantic AI. I like to see what the AI says about their personality profile. That's a tool that'll scan their stuff that they've said and posted and shared within 30 seconds, and it'll give you a personality profile in the person, which is eerily accurate. And I just like to see that because it tells me, is this somebody that is similar to me from a personality profile standpoint, or do I need to show up differently in order to meet them where they are?
That's a lot to glean out of one little profile.
Man, that is gold, Carson. That is gold.
It's a powerful tool.
So I want to jump in. I think there's a good question here. I think this is Kenny, LinkedIn user, but he said, I would love all your thoughts on the fine line between LinkedIn and other social media platforms, more personal, and how to balance content shared on LinkedIn versus Facebook, Instagram, whatever. Great question. Who would like to start that one? I can remove it.
I can take a cut.
Go for it, Mark.
I use LinkedIn predominantly for business purposes, how I want to be esteemed. I don't need anybody seeing where I ate or a picture of my grandbaby and all that stuff, unless I can share it in the context of business. Now, one of my first strays was in this last week. I posted a picture of my motorcycle, and I said, I drove 200 miles for a cheeseburger. I was looking for an interesting, catchy inline. And I talked about how I use that as an opportunity to think, plan, and prioritize as I'm trying to figure out the week to come. So I wanted it to be catchy, and yet I wanted it to also think about sales professionals need to take time to plan before they execute. And so that was me crossing the line gently into the social side, but I think you have to look at LinkedIn as the professional place where you live digitally.
Yeah, well, go ahead, Brandon. I know you have.
No, that's all right, Tom. Go.
No, I
think.
Go ahead. All right. I was just going to say is, and Brandon, I'm just going to set you up, right? I'm going to set up for your comment here. I think there's and I think Brandon, you did a beautiful job on your post today about Cheers, right? You brought up something that was personal. You brought up some personal things on that, but then you swung it back and tied it back to a business concept or to a business piece there. In my opinion, that's the ideal 1 + 1 = 3, right? When you can put a little bit of yourself in there. And Mark, it sounds like you did that with your motorcycle post, right?
Right.
You did a little bit of yourself in there and then combined it and led it to a story there. Now, Brandon, I know you've had some success just putting completely personal stuff out there, and you kind of recommend that at least on some sort of regular basis. Now, I know that's not really your profile, but it does show up on your profile and to a degree starts to represent who you are. Okay, Arm.
Yeah, and I think as we talked about, for me, it's we have a profile, we have posts, and we have our comments, and it's our opportunity to create our persona, our reputation, right? People are consuming, they're reading about us, they go to our profile. And I think, we all said we get to the profile, we start looking at specific things. And one of them is, what content do you highlight and what are the activities? What do you say and what do you share and how do you comment and all that type of stuff? I believe that, yes, it's business first, but if we can bring in the human side, it replicates what we actually do in real life outside of digital. When we go to dinner with customers, what % of that conversation is all business and what % is more human, getting to know each other? We like doing business with people who we like. Right. We like doing business with people who are similar to us. Mark, I thought your post with your motorcycle was fantastic because you showed a bit of your human side and you related into sharing value that had to do with the business. I've got a story of a customer of mine, I don't know, a year or so ago, and working with them and all this, with this type of stuff around posting. And he shared a post of him on top of a mountain, holding his bike, his road bike over his head. And he shared a story about his journey of doing this bike trip and some of the challenges he's overcome to get there. He had hip problems and all this. And he related it back to sales and the challenges that we face and overcome. And one of his connections, it wasn't necessarily a healthy connection, but they were connected on LinkedIn, who happened to also be a very, very key targeted customer account for him. And it was somebody from executive level. He actually resonated with the bike part, caught his attention, commented about being a cyclist also. They went back and forth around cycling, which turned into a Zoom conversation. And it was somebody clear across the country, but was the head of a technology division for a large bank. And all of a sudden, that conversation evolved into a business opportunity. Now, I know that is somewhat of like a very specific use case, but what if? Because personal post, allow people to see a bit more of who we are beyond just, the suit and tie.
Hey, Tom, you need to pop up Mary Ann's post because she beat Carson to it. Carson, were you reading her post?
Yeah, I think this is what Carson was going to say, wasn't it?
Yeah. So that was perfect. Yeah. And back to the top of your profile, one of the things I encourage is once you kind of talk about the I statement and what you're responsible for serving the customer, then I love a line that says, outside of work, you'll find me. Snow skiing, golfing, riding a motorcycle, volunteering, whatever it is, because that's the first little glimpse into who you are. And I agree with you, Brandon, trying to figure out how to expose the human side of you. And I'd never, ever, until this minute, thought about the fact that in business dinners, we talk mostly on the personal level, and that inside of LinkedIn, there's a better opportunity to do that. So that was I'm writing that down right now.
Brandon's been on a roll today, and that thing about the headline showing up in the message, I mean, that was like a pro tip there as well.
Yeah. Well, the dad joke besides,
I think he started on the dad joke high. It just propelled him into, we kind of jockey back and forth today as Brandon is the star, like give him the ball. This is good dialogue because I think at the heart of it, you can glean information from all of these different social platforms. But when I think about it, like in the landscape, I've got over 300,000 followers on social media. The vast majority are on Twitter. But what am I doing on Twitter? Am I, getting business relationships and deals done? No, I'm getting intelligence there. I've sold a lot of books there. LinkedIn is where I have the majority of the business relationships. However, I can give you an example of a time where I was having a really tough time with a procurement person negotiating a deal. And I looked him up on Facebook and I found out that we liked the same sports team. So guess what I brought up the next time we jumped onto a call together, softened him a little bit. So Instagram, I'm out there, haven't developed business relationships out there, but don't know what it could bring. I think the key is like a stock portfolio, you want to have a differentiated portfolio. You don't want to alienate or discriminate against any of these potential pockets for relationships or information. But when it comes down to social selling, LinkedIn is king.
Yep,
for sure. And shout out to, I have a group on Facebook, and I don't use Facebook newsfeed very much, but I have a group of about 800 people. And that's where I talk a little bit of business, but I also talk about being a dad and a husband. It's called Connect Your Dots Community. And I restream, because we use the tool Restream, I restream this in there because this is my business side. But I'm very fluid across my business, my personal life. And I restream it in there because it's a part of who I am to be inside that community. And business conversations move. They've gone from Facebook and seeing me there. They then connect with me on LinkedIn. They start seeing deeper portions of my sales or my business content. And then things bubble up into being part of business. I've had a couple of people that have joined the Modern Seller HQ community by going through that path from Facebook to LinkedIn, and now they're in Modern Seller HQ.
Yeah, and I think I completely agree. If in answering the question that Kenny had is, you almost have to look at your social or online digital presence a bit holistically, right? Yes, you may have different things, but it's not just one. And I think the lines are actually blurring. Almost what we were talking about is, while there may be personal stuff on LinkedIn, I see more stuff on Facebook now that's business or business related, and even TikTok, right? I mean, we've been taking snippets from this show and putting it on TikTok, and a lot of times getting a lot of good feedback, or whether it's YouTube or whatever the case may be. So I don't know that everything's siloed anymore. I think it should be looked at a bit holistically, but I agree completely, Mark. What you're saying is, as the conduit for social selling, LinkedIn is your primary vehicle for doing that, but it doesn't mean those other channels can't.
Oh, no.
And I like what Carson said about Twitter. Sorry, Mark. Is Carson has a plan for Twitter. He doesn't engage a whole lot there, but he sells books on there, right? And that's a great use case for Twitter. And he uses it accordingly. I think if you're looking at any of the other social medias, it's number one is know what your purpose is and use it accordingly.
Yeah.
I like to use Instagram and TikTok a little bit, but mostly Instagram for intel. I go look and see if people are on there. And if they have an open account and I can see what they post, what they're about, kind of like what you did, Carson, you learned that you have the same favorite sports team and you're able to use that to connect. So I think it's just such a powerful tools that we have in front of us for intel. And then simultaneously, we could use it to make sure that we're messaging out to the world strategically what we want them to know about us.
And kind of wrapping up here on our LinkedIn profile conversation, I wanted to ask one
real
more.
Quick, Tom, can I interrupt? Because Mark and I kind of talked over each other, and I want to make sure that Mark gets a chance to say what he said before I rudely interrupted him.
So when I'm coaching, I got a prop on my desk, and it's a Swiss Army knife. And as I sit back and think about social selling and the way we reach things, I think each one of these tools is really important. And I use this as a visual because our LinkedIn profile and the way we're authoring content and the way we're liking are all tools to advance our social presence, as is Facebook and other methods out there. The whole goal is to be valuable and useful and build your business. Now, Carson at Microsoft, they did a little over $200 billion worth of sales last year, and they grew at a 18% clip rate. So that means that Microsoft as a company has got to grow $36 billion in net new revenue in 2023. And I guarantee you, social selling at Microsoft and social selling at IBM are critical. How do you go find $36 billion worth of stuff if every single person, all 25,000 of them, aren't building relationships and sharing that? You can't depend on marketing. And so you got to look at your Swiss Army knife, and you have to look at all those dimensions. And Carson, to your comment about the mutual fund portfolio, you got to spend a little time in all of them in order to maximize your results.
Well
said. And no pressure on Carson to go get that extra $20 billion or whatever.
No, none. No, we're finding it, right? That's what we get paid to do. Yeah.
So Carson, you must have another movie reference here before we move on to the.
Yeah, I had one planned for today. The other one was a freebie. So, just thinking about not having a LinkedIn profile or a presence, it reminded me of the movie Castaway starring Tom Hanks. If you recall, Hanks is a FedEx employee. He's stranded on a deserted island. He's isolated. He has no means of communication or really contact with the outside world. So very similarly, if you don't have a LinkedIn profile or your profile is very poorly optimized, it can't be found by customers or clients or hiring managers, you too will probably feel isolated and disconnected from valuable business opportunities. You just like Tom Hanks in that movie had to find a way to survive and connect with other people. It's very important to establish a strong LinkedIn presence and use that as a tool for building and nurturing relationships with your potential customers and clients. So just kind of dawned on me.
Wow. I feel like I should drop my mic here after that, but we still got a couple more things to do, Carson. That was your best movie reference. Now the bar has been raised on the movie references. This isn't.
So you're not promoting everyone go out and find their own Wilson. Actually go out and find real people.
Correct.
Yeah, yes. Jeff added it.
Yeah. Not to say that your best clients may be Wilson. So
as we wrap up here, let's do kind of a speed round. If you had to pick one thing that you were going to tell somebody, and we'll start with you, Mark, to be thinking about to improve, if they could just leave right now after the show, go look at their LinkedIn profile. If there was one thing that you would recommend that they would look at to improve, or to just look at to see if it could use improvement or optimization, what would that be?
Can I get two?
Oh,
you're the guest. You can have three if you want.
No, only two. Number one is I would tell you to make your about section really, really valuable. When I teach know, be known, serve, and solve, you really got to know the customer. They got to know you. And in the middle of that is where trust is bound. And then when you show up with a servant's heart, I'm a Christian, and it's all about being able to be of service. If as a seller, you can show that you're going to be of service, it's their agenda, not yours, in your about section, that can make all the difference. And if you can show them in your about section, you're about co-creation and collaboration to get to a joint solution for their benefit, I think that is gold. And then secondly, it's, if I had a second one, thanks for giving me grace to be able to give me two. But the second would be to really go down and focus on those references that you get. You got to collect them. You might have to go cold calling for them and say, hey, you know, I didn't get a chance to document the great work we did. Would you consider writing one? And so sometimes you got to go collect those because people aren't just going to take time to write them. But those would be the two. A great profile, really polish it, no buzzwords, no puffery, be a service to your client, and then collect some evidence from others. And likewise for you, show you've got a gracious heart and that you're going to go out and say, compliment others for the value that they've created in your work life.
Awesome. Brandon, what's your take?
Well, I got to follow that. Thanks for making me follow Mark. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem.
Don't disagree with any of Mark's, but so to stack value on top of that, I would say your headline, because I'm such a big believer in the value of commenting, because I believe commenting is a digital form of listening. It gets us into conversations. It helps us be seen by more people. And the first thing they see, and it's hard because it's your image and your name, and your name's your name, but your picture and your headline is sometimes, a lot of times, it's people's first view of who you are.
Awesome. Carson.
Yeah, you know what? Since they said some of the stuff I was going to say, I will pick a different one. But I mean, headline is great because, frankly, with headline, you've got the opportunity to say something very unique about what types of conversations you want to have, and also where you want to be and how you want to be found. Because I always think about it from the context of, from LinkedIn perspective, how am I going to be found? What do I want to say about myself? You obviously have to, opt in the spirit of brevity, using some keywords. I would avoid buzzwords and what everybody else does, which is just say your title and, what you do. But throw some personality into it. I saw a friend of mine put saxophonist in there one time. Be provocative, say something that's going to be a conversation starter. But I'll pick the featured section, which doesn't need a whole lot of pomp and circumstance, right? Pick some projects, pick some videos, some interviews, a presentation you've created, and put it in there, because those are the types of things that are going to be seen and that are going to make your profile stand out.
Yeah, and my vote would be, if you're not already a content creator, or you have that, go ahead and sign up for that content creator. I don't know if there's certain criteria you have to have or certain number of connections to do that, but that's when you can put in the hashtags. That gives you some other capabilities, so it allows you to further enhance. I think maybe even the featured section, Carson, you have to be a content creator mode to do that. So I would recommend looking at doing that as kind of a first step as well.
I like Susan's comment in there as a reminder too. Sorry, I know we're going a little over, but just for anybody, I mean, just take a simple pause for a second. Go, have I updated my details lately?
Yeah.
I went into someone's profile the other day, and the link they had was a job that they had like 2 jobs ago.
Good point.
Wow.
I may have a couple of those. Thanks. So
yeah, well, Carson, thanks for you. Like, I'm sitting here going, I haven't updated my featured section for a while, and I want to add like our top 10 mindsets of modern sellers and some of this stuff. So
there you go.
Thank you for that, brother.
Yeah, beautiful. I learn stuff from these all the time, just walking through and hearing what you and our guests suggest. So this is upping all of our game. We're all newbies at heart.
Absolutely. And if you haven't joined already, please come and join our Modern Seller HQ community. More and more good stuff in there coming up. I think we actually are having a whole section on LinkedIn and LinkedIn profile and LinkedIn essentials that are going to be in there. So there'll be more on that. And Mark, really great having you today. Awesome. Yeah. Awesome insights. Awesome guests. Next time we'll have you bring.
We'll have you back, Mark.
Oh, I'd love it. I'd love it. This is fun. You guys
Mark,
are.
Give me a high five. Give me a high
five. Virtual high five. Yeah. Always there. There you go. Yeah, we can do that.
There they are.
Yeah. It's a beautiful thing that you guys are doing. You think how many people earn a living, support their families, and make a life as sellers, and I think you're shaping behavior it's not just about bigger commission checks, but a lot of it's the joy you get from showing up as a trusted advisor with your clients, letting them find you through a LinkedIn profile, and then living up to your potential.
Hey, we're proud to be salespeople. We want to be noble knights of the selling game, and we love giving to the sales community. So much greatness that comes out of the sales community.
Absolutely.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Privileged to be here.
And thanks, Michael, for your comment, and thanks, Marianne, for yours as always, and thanks everybody who jumped in today. Carson, do you want to take us home?
Yes. Thank you all so much for being with us, and until next time, happy social selling.